unfortunately, we have term limits in Maine. And so I decided to run going into my third term, and I was fortunate enough to be elected. I think it was very important for me to be involved with Maine Now, and then later I was on the national board for 4 years. I think the most important thing about all that is being in the company of other women who are thinking and working toward the same goals of equality for women, taking on issues, making sure choice was protected, equal rights, and around domestic violence, all those pieces, gay rights, the leadership was women. And that was incredibly important to me to have those role models. I often think to myself, they can never not be here. Because, frankly, sexism still exists in this society. It's part of the atmosphere. And until we've gotten rid of it, and I am one who believes that we can get rid of it, but until we have to have an active voice, monitoring everything, and putting forward legislation that moves us more and more close to women being completely equal without any exception. Again, at another place where we brought women together from various organizations and sort of various viewpoints, all to put together an agenda that really comprehensively looked at women's rights and how we could move those rights forward legislatively. So I learned a whole lot in that process about the legislative process, for one thing, and what the barriers were. You know, they sometimes aren't what you think they're going to be. Anyway, there were wonderful women there. Strangely enough, domestic violence wasn't a crime. Assault was a crime. Battery was a crime. But the notion that somebody would do one thing to someone and then do another thing to someone and then do another thing, they couldn't be connected before. There was no chain. And so we had to work very hard with prosecutors, who of course have to create the chain, to figure out a way to put the bill forward that would allow that to happen. And so that was the work, that was the big work. So I got to put the bill forward, and then it was the question of educating a citizen legislature about what that history was, what the difficulties were, and what this bill could do. And to their credit, they agreed. And that's because over the past 30 years, there's an understanding that, yes, there is domestic violence, and people need protection. There are still a ton of things we have to do. You and I know perfectly well that time period when somebody gets a protection from abuse order to when they're safe is a bad time. And there are things that we tried to do that we couldn't get past that still need to get passed. For instance, making sure that someone has, a person who has a protective abuse order against them doesn't have possession of a gun and can't carry one. Hard battle, but that still needs to be done because that's a very dangerous time. In my tenure in the legislature, we've never had enough money. And we've had to cut every single time. And I said at the beginning of this legislative session, we have cut to the bone, and there is nothing left. And you know, at the end, you have to make these horrible compromises. And we had fought very hard to get the domestic violence money in there, and I managed to save $1 million by just basically at the table at the end when we're trying to really say with the minority party, okay, what are we going to do here? I just said, gotta have this, not leaving the table without it. When they have the girls' day at the State House, it would take your breath away. You know, they have hundreds of girls here going to committees, having their own debates, taking over the place. And then in the afternoon when the house is out, they bring them into the House chamber and they fill the House chamber. And I got to welcome them from the podium, and it took my breath away. Stand at the podium in the House and look out and see young female faces. Can't get any better than that. Just terrific.